So at this point, got a couple of possibilities. How many of you have heard or read my essay called Ayahuasca and Human Destiny? Nobody? A couple people. Okay. Yeah. Well, you have. Hello. How you doing? How many of you have heard about read my essay on, what was it called? A lesson from the teacher, a lesson from Waska. You have. Okay. Well, you're excused. Tom's excused. Good. Fresh audience. So I think what I'm going to do is read one of these things. The question is, which one? And
how about some inside dirt on Terrence?
No, you have to support the book for that. No, that'll all come out in the book, right?
It's coming.
But actually, I'm glad you raised that point, because one of the questions, since this is an audience, this is obviously an audience for the Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss book, once it's written, what do you want it to be about? What I'm finding in the process of doing this fundraising and doing all this social networking and all that, I'm finding this is not about me. This is a collaborative effort of the community. The support is coming, the energy is coming from the community, the interest is coming. What do you want the book to be about?
Well, Dennis, you asked what we'd kind of like to hear about, and I can say for me, I'd like to, as far as the book goes as well, obviously it's stories and old stuff and insider stuff. Right. But I'm really interested in how ethnobotany kind of and this kind of stuff integrates with cosmology and the soul. I know it's very wide and sweeping, but it's all also kind of in the same vein.
Wow. Well, okay. That's a tall order.
Well, I mean,
it will relate to that, because actually ethnobotany does relate to cosmology and the soul because of these spiritual plants, these plant spirit medicines, which are ways that cultures have related to a spiritual reality for as long as as long as humanity has been on this planet. And really, you have to remember that what we're seeing, what we are aware of, is a kind of a small slice of what is really a co-evolutionary process that stretches back for millennia, and probably, if we're lucky, if we manage not to destroy the planet, will stretch forward for millennia. And so if you look at the historical sort of record of our relationship with plants, and to some degrees our prehistoric record, we're still looking at a tiny slice of the total process, because the process has gone on for millions of years. I mean, the evidence now, the best archaeological evidence, which is still pretty spotty, is that as conscious beings, we don't go much further back than the 500,000 years. I mean, we have clear evidence that's 500,000 years old that we were thinking beings able to appreciate abstractions and able to express those abstractions in the form of artistic artifacts and that sort of thing. And that's really that's kind of what we're forced to, that's what we're limited to. Probably much older than that, but maybe not that much older. Maybe we've been, thinking primates, conscious primates for 1 million years, maybe 1.5 million, maybe 2 million years. That's a very short slice of evolutionary time if you think about it. And the slice of time that we think of as history, somewhere from about 10,000 years ago to the present, is a tiny percentage of that. And yet we're trapped within that perspective. So this is something I'm going to talk more about at the conference. I'm going to talk about the origins of the human imagination and this plant-human symbiosis that we're immersed in, whether we like it or not, because this is what sustains all life on Earth. Plants are this incredible thing that they are the mechanism by which energy is brought into the cosmos, into the biosphere from the cosmos through the process of photosynthesis and made into useful energy, chemical energy that sustains life. And so, although it's in the background a lot, this relationship to cosmology and our spiritual traditions is inseparable from who we are, because we are biological entities. We're biochemical engines, if you think about it. This is something that's often lost sight of in current Western religious traditions, and I think it makes them, it impoverishes them in some ways, and it gives them funny and not helpful ideas about such things as sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Which I'm here to tell you, that really is what life is all about. I could go into that at some length, maybe we will.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's great, because it brings it in from out there through plants to in here, and then through the biology of plants to us as we ingest and we open ourselves to what they want to tell us.
I'm interested in this plant-human symbiosis idea and this notion that we live in a chemical ecology. We live in a world of complex plant chemistry, and we're made of plants, right? We're not, we're not separate from our environment. We're semi-permeable membranes, and we're taking things in and compounds in and excreting things and exhaling things, and it's a two-way street. So we're involved in this. We're enmeshed in this complex chemical ecology. And plants, because they can photosynthesize, are amazing chemists, and that's why they originate this enormous variety, biodiversity, if you will, of chemical compounds. Now I'm beginning to sound like my lecture on this, and I don't want to really get too sidetracked on that, but basically, a very famous botanist once said, plants substitute biosynthesis for behavior. We respond to our environment through behavior. We can flee or stay and fight, or we can move away from danger and all that. Well, plants are stuck usually in one place. They just sit there. They deal with their environment through chemistry. Chemistry is the language of plants. And, some plant chemicals released into the environment say, stay away, leave me alone. I'm a tough customer. You don't want to mess with me. The toxins, right? Other chemicals are more interesting. They say, come, let's have a dance together. Let's, and that might be a message to a bee that wants to pollinate the flower, or that may be a message to an omnivore that wants to eat a plant and experience, the neurochemistry. If it contains a neurochemical compound, experience what that plant has to teach. And that's kind of the origin of the plant teachers. It's something that arises out of this chemical diversity. The neurotransmitters in our brains, there are many. There are about 50 or so different types of neurotransmitters that have been identified. But the three that are kind of thought to be the vehicles of consciousness, if you will, the neurochemistry that mediates consciousness are these so-called biogenic amines, serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, right? These are neurotransmitters, but what's kind of interesting is all of those things come from our diet, because they all come from amino acids, which are called the essential amino acids. And the reason they're essential is that we don't make them. Our bodies have forgotten how to make these things. So we have to get them from our diet. We have to get them ultimately from plants, either by eating animals that have eaten plants or by eating those plants, right? And so the very molecules in our brains that are sustaining conscious experience are plant chemicals, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. We're not separate. We are what we eat. And what we eat, especially if we have good diets, is a lot of plants, and it's good. You should you should eat lots of plant chemicals because they're good for the plants and they're good for us.